In the door, we found him just laying there in the pool of blood. My daughter screamed and said, "Ma, turn his phone off." And as I proceeded to look at his phone, he was on Instagram Live.
This is Shaniqua Stevens, a mother from Forest Park, Georgia, describing the moment she kicked down her own son's bedroom door and found him dying on the floor with a gun beside him. His phone was still streaming live to the internet, and this said son was 13 years old. His name was Malachi Hemphill, and on the night of April 10th, 2017, he accidentally shot himself in the head while live on Instagram. Before we get into what happened that night, we need to go back to the beginning, because this story does not start with a gun. It starts with a kid that everybody loved and a chain of careless decisions made by the adults around him that nobody ever bothered to trace until it was already too late.
When I heard I cried for 3 hours straight. He was everything. He was cool, chill, calm, all that.
It can happen to the best parents that's best to their kids, to the best to their ability. It can happen to the best people, the best ones that love their kids.
Malachi Nasir Hemphill was born on September 11, 2003 in Georgia, and he grew up in Forest Park, a small city sitting just south of Atlanta in Clayton County. He lived on a street called Pine Ridge Court with his mother, Shaniqua Stevens, his younger sister, and his stepfather, Ernest Stevens. And by every account from the people who knew him, that house was a real home where the adults were paying attention. His mother was linked to his phone. His stepfather was having real conversations with him about the kind of man he needed to become. Ernest would later tell reporters that they raised Malachi the right way, that they set out to be role models and kept a close eye on who he was spending time with. He was not just saying that to defend himself. Everyone who knew the family said the same thing. Malachi was in 7th grade at Babb Middle School in Forest Park, where teachers and classmates knew him as someone who could light up a room without even trying. He played football for his school team and for his church. He loved music, dancing, making people laugh, and had this easy confidence about him that made people want to be around him. His grandmother, Helen Hemphill, drove him to school every morning without fail, and she described him to NBC News as a comical and energetic kid who was not a bad kid at all, a wonderful kid and a great grandson. His family believed he had a real future in front of him. His name, Malachi, comes from Hebrew and means "my angel" or "messenger of God," taken from the biblical prophet who was the last of the 12 minor prophets. His family reflected on that meaning a great deal after everything happened because it felt like more than just a name. Like almost every kid his age in 2017, Malachi was deep into social media, and Instagram was where he spent a lot of his time online. The thing about Malachi and Instagram, though, was that he did not just have one account. His mother later told investigators that he kept so many different pages that she could not always track his usernames, rotating through fake accounts the way teenagers do when they want a little breathing room from the adults watching them. That habit of operating in spaces his parents could not fully see would end up being one of the small threads in a bigger problem. Now, here is the piece of this story that the family did not know anything about until it was already too late. Somewhere in the 4 or 5 days before April 10th, Malachi had gotten hold of a high-point 9mm semi-automatic pistol, which is a cheap but fully real firearm, and he had hidden it in his bedroom. Nobody in that house knew it was there. His grandmother, Helen, believed that one of Malachi's friends had traded him the gun for his iPhone roughly 4 days before the incident, and the investigation that followed would eventually support that version of events. But the story of that gun goes back even further than the trade, because Shaniqua later shared the full picture in her tribute on the Moments That Survive project, which is connected to the gun safety organization Everytown. We'll get to that detail shortly. That Monday evening, April 10th, 2017, started like any regular night in the Stevens home. Shaniqua was downstairs with her daughter. Malachi had just gone outside to take the trash out, something his mother watched him do herself. Nothing was off or strange or different from any other Monday night in that house. About 10 minutes after he came back inside, Malachi went upstairs to his room, locked the door, and started a live stream on Instagram. What happened next is something his mother would spend years trying to piece together from what investigators told her and what the people watching the stream that night described to her afterward. Malachi had the gun with him in the room while he was live, and he was showing it off on camera. At some point during the stream, he was handling the pistol with the magazine, which is the piece that holds the bullets, not yet inserted. Someone watching the live stream noticed this and typed a comment asking why the gun had no clip in it, and then told him to go ahead and put the magazine in. Malachi did exactly that, and the moment he pushed the magazine into the gun, it went off. What almost certainly happened, based on how that type of firearm works, is that there was already a bullet sitting in the chamber before the magazine was even inserted. When a semi-automatic pistol has a round already chambered, it is already ready to fire. You do not need to put a magazine in first. Malachi almost certainly had no idea about any of that. He was 13 years old and playing with something he didn't understand in front of a camera, trying to look tough for whoever was watching. The shot hit him in the head. Shaniqua was downstairs when she heard the sound come from above her. She told reporters she couldn't immediately tell if it was a gunshot, but she knew right away that something was very wrong and ran upstairs with her daughter. They were calling Malachi's name and getting nothing back. His door was locked, which his mother said was unusual because he almost never locked it, and they didn't stand there waiting. They kicked the door in together. Even in a moment that terrible, the camera was still running. The live stream continued showing what was happening until Shaniqua found the phone and ended it, and Instagram removed the video shortly after. It has never been publicly archived and never resurfaced anywhere. Malachi was rushed by ambulance to Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, where he was pronounced dead. Some records list the official date of death as April 11th, which would put it just after midnight. He never regained consciousness after the shot. By the time the ambulance arrived at Pine Ridge Court, between 40 and 50 neighborhood kids had already showed up outside the house because they had been watching the stream on their phones and ran over the moment they understood what they had just seen. Shaniqua described looking out at all those children gathered in her front yard and understanding what that meant, that every single one of them had just watched her son die through a screen. From the very first interviews after that night, both the family and the Forest Park Police Department were saying the same thing clearly. This was not a suicide or intentional, and there was no history of Malachi ever wanting to hurt himself. Shaniqua told every outlet that would listen that her son's death was an accident, not an intentional suicide, and she never changed that position in any interview she gave. He was not depressed or in crisis. He was a 13-year-old kid who got hold of a gun he didn't know how to handle and made a fatal mistake in front of a camera, trying to look cool.
Just only 13, and just the thought of me seeing him on the floor would never leave my brain.
But first, new at 5, a heartbreaking story you'll see only on 11 Alive. A mother in disbelief tonight, mourning the loss of her teenage son. He accidentally shot himself live on Instagram.
Forest Park police are now investigating while the 13-year-old's parents hope that families can learn from this tragedy. 11 Alive's Joe Hankey spoke to the grieving parents this afternoon.
Well, Jeff and Sheba, the 13-year-old's parents tell me they raised their son the right way. They set out to be role models, monitored his social media accounts, and kept tabs on who he was friends with. But with all of that, they believe some outside influence still led to tragedy. Malachi Hemphill's parents say they will remember their 13-year-old boy as a talented, smiling young man.
You know, it was so much things that he knew how to do that he was good at, so well, he didn't know what he wanted to do.
But on Monday night, 10 minutes after his mom saw him take out the trash, she heard something terrifying.
I heard a big boom. I couldn't tell if it was a shot or what. I just knew that it was something that was wrong.
Inside their Forest Park home, Shaniqua Stevens and her daughter ran upstairs and began yelling for Malachi through his locked door, a door his mom says he never locked.
We kicked in the door. We found him just laying there in the pool of blood. My daughter screamed and said, "Ma, turn his phone off." And as I proceeded to look at his phone, he was on Instagram Live.
She says she did not know her son was on Instagram Live or that he brought home a gun, but believes he got it from a friend. As he showed it off on camera, his mom said he accidentally himself. Minutes later, in her front yard, neighborhood children gathered.
I guess these were the kids that were watching it on live that live in the area.
Her son later in the hospital. Now she wants her son's tragic to force parents to never stop asking questions, to know where their children are and what they're doing.
Monitor their phones. Just monitor your children more now than anything.
And Malachi's stepfather says he worked to be a role model, spoke about wrong and right and making decisions, but he now knows that a wrong influence outside of the home can still lead to heartbreak.
It can happen to the best parents that's best to their kids, to the best to their ability. It can happen to the best people, the best ones that love their kids.
And Forest Park police today confirmed they are investigating the circumstances that led up to the boy's mother tells me detectives are trying to determine how a gun ended up in a child's hands to begin with. The family's holding a vigil outside their home tonight in Forest Park at 7:30. Jeff.
My goodness, such an awful story, Joe. Thank you.
Forest Park Police Major Chris Matson held a press conference on April 13th and confirmed the same thing, calling the circumstances certainly tragic and a horrific event, while making clear that investigators found no signs pointing to suicide. He used the press conference to push parents to pay closer attention to what their kids were doing online and whether there were unsecured weapons anywhere within reach. Forest Park Police opened their investigation the same night Malachi died, and from the very beginning, their focus was on one question: how did a 13-year-old boy get his hands on a loaded pistol? Shaniqua had made clear that she had no idea the gun was in the house. It was not registered to anyone in the family, and nobody in the household owned a firearm. So where it came from was the whole case. Investigators also moved quickly to try and get the Instagram footage and any related account data, knowing the stream had been watched live and might contain evidence about what exactly happened in that room. Detectives filed legal paperwork to try and get the video and account information from Instagram, but it was complicated from the start. Instagram had already removed the video, and no public confirmation ever came out that the platform handed over any data to police. At the same time, detectives were consulting with the Clayton County District Attorney's Office about whether any criminal charges were possible, including charges related to whoever had given Malachi the gun. They were working that thread carefully, tracing the pistol back through the hands it had passed through, and what they eventually found led them directly to a young person close to Malachi. On or around April 17, 2017, about a week after Malachi died, Forest Park Police arrested a juvenile in connection with the case. Because the person was a minor, Georgia law protected their identity completely, so no name, no age beyond juvenile, and no specific details about the charges were ever released publicly. Police described the offenses only as numerous charges related to the incident and confirmed that the central issue was that this person had provided the gun to Malachi. The full story of how that gun traveled from where it started to Malachi's bedroom was eventually laid out by Shaniqua herself in her tribute on the Moments That Survive project. She wrote that the gun had been stolen by Malachi's friend from a neighbor's home, specifically taken from the console of that neighbor's car, which was left unlocked outside. The neighbor, when investigators came to his door, told them he had so many firearms that he had not even noticed one was missing and had never reported it stolen. That gun went from a careless adult's unlocked car to a juvenile who stole it to Malachi in exchange for an iPhone, and the whole chain took only a few days. Despite all of this, no charges were ever filed against the adult whose negligence put the gun into circulation in the first place. The neighbor who owned multiple unsecured firearms and left them in an unlocked car faced no legal consequences for any of it. The juvenile's case was sealed as Georgia law requires for minors, and there have been no public updates on what happened in those proceedings in the years since. The investigation, for all practical purposes, closed with that single arrest. On Wednesday evening, April 12th, nearly 200 people gathered outside the Stevens family home for a candlelight vigil. They stood hand in hand, lit candles around a photo of Malachi, wrote notes, and released balloons into the sky. The people who showed up that night were not strangers paying their respects to someone they had seen on the news. They were his people, his neighbors, his teammates, the kids who had grown up on the same streets with him. One of his close friends told reporters he had cried for 3 hours straight when he heard that Malachi was gone. Babb Middle School brought in grief counselors the next morning, and students wrote cards for him, trying to make sense of how a kid who had been in those hallways just days before was suddenly not coming back.
The hardest part of today was when the man asked me what color casket that I wanted to put my son in.
New at 10, tears shed family and friends in just utter disbelief as they're mourning the death of a 13-year-old. Malachi Hemphill accidentally hit himself in the head Monday night. He was live on social media.
Tonight, family and friends gathered outside the family home in Forest Park for a vigil. Chris Hopper has that story for us.
Just engulf them with your peace and your love, Lord God.
Dozens of Malachi Hemphill's loved ones stood hand in hand tonight, stronger together, but deeply clouded by an unbelievable lack of understanding.
Nobody expects their son to accidentally themselves.
Shaniqua Stevens heard the shot, saw the blood, and was there when her 13-year-old son at the hospital. But tonight, reality is still impossible to grasp.
To find your 13-year-old son on the floor with a shot in his head, that's something that you just never forget. You never forget the image.
Monday night, Malachi shot himself in the head while streaming live on Instagram. Tonight, friends and family gathered outside the family's home in Forest Park. They lit candles, wrote notes, and released balloons, all to remember Malachi.
When I heard I cried for 3 hours straight. He was everything. He was cool, chill, calm, all that.
Stevens wants her son senseless to be an example for others.
And you see your friend with a, tell a parent, because this is a situation that didn't have to go this far.
If only one person had told her Monday night that Malachi was live on social media with he might still be alive.
My son was the light of my life. Anybody who ever met him, he just brought joy to everybody.
Malachi's mom says she's not sure where he got the. She heard from a friend. Detectives say they're working to find out where it came from. Stephen says she's constantly monitored his social media accounts, and tonight she's urging other parents to do the same.
In the middle of all that grief, something unexpected happened. NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal, who was living in the Atlanta area at the time, heard about what happened to Malachi and reached out to the family. He called first, and then he went to the house in person. When he got there and understood that Malachi had no life insurance and that the family had no way to cover the cost of burying their son, he told them he would pay for everything. Malachi's godmother, Shanteria Bankston, described the moment it happened, saying the family broke down crying because they had not been ready to bury him this young, they had no insurance for him, and having Shaquille step up the way he did was a blessing they would never forget. Shaquille kept it simple in his statement. He said no mother should have to go through what Shaniqua was going through, and that he just wanted to do what he could to help them at such a terrible time.
He was 13 and he was in his bedroom playing with a.
An arrest has been made after a teenage boy accidentally himself to death in his bedroom. Loved ones say 13-year-old Malachi Hemphill was showing off his new on Instagram's live feature when it discharged. Many of his friends were watching the video when Malachi was. Police have arrested a juvenile who they claim gave Malachi the weapon and charged him with numerous crimes. The person's name has not been released because they're a minor. Former basketball superstar Shaquille O'Neal has offered to pay for the Georgia family's funeral expenses, saying in a statement, quote, "No mother should have to go through this." I just wanted to do what I could to help them at such a terrible time, end quote. Funeral arrangements have not yet been announced. For InsideEdition.com, I'm Lee Sheps.
Shaniqua Stevens did not go quiet after her son died. She stayed in front of cameras and kept talking, not to relitigate the incident, but to make sure other parents understood what she had learned from it. She told reporters she had done everything you're supposed to do, and it still wasn't enough because the danger had come from somewhere she hadn't thought to look. Everytown for Gun Safety later used Malachi's story as part of their push for Ethan's Law, a federal bill that would require gun owners to store their firearms securely, arguing that Malachi's death was exactly the kind of tragedy that proper storage laws are designed to prevent, because they're right. The gun that killed Malachi started in an unlocked car. That's where the whole chain began. Helen Hemphill put it plainly when she told reporters that it was too easy for a young person to get hold of a gun, and that when firearms were that easy to access, they were always going to end up in the wrong hands. 5 years after Malachi died, in March of 2022, a 12-year-old girl named Paris Harvey and her 14-year-old cousin Kyoron Harvey were killed in a bathroom in St. Louis while filming on Instagram Live. Paris was playing with a gun on camera. It discharged, killing Kyoron. Then Paris was killed too. The family said it was a freak accident and no adult was charged. The gun's origin was never publicly confirmed. It was the same story 5 years later with different names.
2 children are dead after one of them found a gun during a family party in downtown St. Louis. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Michelle Lee.
And I'm Kelly Jackson. And for Brent Solomon, family members tell us a 12-year-old girl accidentally shot and killed her 14-year-old cousin. Police say the girl then died by suicide. 5 on your side's Christine Byers talked to the girl's mom this afternoon. She is live in downtown St. Louis with this exclusive interview. Christine.
Kelly, police are still investigating exactly how this happened, but the mother of Paris Harvey, 12 years old, tells me it was all accidental. Shanice Harvey wept on her front porch less than 12 hours after she learned her daughter Paris and her brother's son Karan were.
Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God.
It happened at about 2 o'clock Friday morning here at the couple's apartment complex in downtown St. Louis, just a few blocks away from Busch Stadium. Shanice said she let her daughter go to a party with family to celebrate March birthdays.
And everybody was getting together to celebrate. And so the younger kids, they got a bed and breakfast.
Shanice said her daughter found a gun and accidentally shot and killed her cousin. Police are calling the little girl's a suicide. Shanice believes her daughter shot herself accidentally. And it was all streamed live on Instagram.
They was making a video, and she was playing with the gun, but it went off and hit him. And as it hit him, she dropped the gun, and it fell, and it went off, from my knowledge. And then when she picked it up by the barrel, and it went off. And that's all I know.
I'm so sorry.
I appreciate you all trying to get the story right. I truly appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Because it seems like you have just as many questions as we do about how could this happen at 2 o'clock in the morning with kids this young?
Yeah, and there's no way that, with all that family, they should have basically made sure she was okay. Everybody should have stuck with somebody. We got to look out for each other. We're family. And, they're young. So.
Now, police are still trying to determine who owned the gun and whether anyone can be charged in connection with this terrible tragedy. Live in downtown St. Louis, Christine Byers, 5 on your side.
Malachi Hemphill was not a troubled kid, and his family did not fail him. He was a 13-year-old who got his hands on a gun that an adult had left sitting in an unlocked car, and he took it to his room and played with it on camera, because that's what 13-year-olds do when they're trying to look cool online. The only thing that was different in 2017 was that the audience was right there in his pocket, watching in real time, and one of them told him to load the gun. Shaniqua wrote in her tribute years after everything that when his heart stopped, theirs did too. He was 13 years old, and the last thing he ever did was go live. What do you think about this horrendous death? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know what you think. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.